G'day everyone, welcome back to Analytical Strategy and another week of Australian Survivor. We're up to week 6 in episode 16 and there were some major alliance shakeups happening with the potential of returning to the original tribe divisions to round out the rest of the season. So let's get straight into it. So the episode kicks off with everyone feeling a little bit paranoid with Hayley being back in the game and likely still looking at wanting to vote her straight back out of the game. But they are also a little bit wary that she may have gotten an idol at Redemption Rock, which may play into their thought process of who to send home. But Hayley's game plan is to learn from her past mistakes of previously throwing everyone under the bus and try to work with people rather than see everyone as an enemy. A really good starting point for her was speaking with Kara, someone who plays heavily on empathy and emotion, and she did actually make some small progress with her early on in the episode. Then she moved to the wider group with her pitch to stay brain strong for the rest of the season. So with 6 original brains and 4 original brawn left in the game, that is absolutely the right move for Hayley to try and proceed further in this game. So the reward that took place this episode was a memory challenge for an Outback pub meal, and it had heaps of pub food, otherwise known as KFC and beer. Danny and Flick got the points for their team, with Gerald, Way and Laura joining with those two on this reward. So after they all inhaled absolutely abnormal amounts of the dirty bird, Danny brings up forming this new alliance of those 5 all being on the reward together. So my first thoughts are, I actually really like this idea for Danny. It's a great idea for Danny's game, as there are 3 brawn and 2 brains within this 5, so if she can get to the final 5 with this group, she's setting herself up extremely well to put herself in a winning position, assuming she would go to the end with the other brawn members in Gerald and Flick. However, she backs up this idea by saying, let's target Emmett at the next vote out, and this was a really terrible move. I did not like this, and it was not a good idea for Danny's game at all. Throwing out a brawn at the next vote makes absolutely no sense for her when there are still the likes of Hayley, George and Andrew not in that group. It's cutting the brawn alliance off straight away, when she could have still had this new alliance of 5, could have also had Emmett along in the background, and then she would have had all the options when it gets down to the nitty gritty of the game. So Flick was obviously not too happy with this plan and told Emmett basically straight away, so this was really looking like it could really spell trouble for Danny at the next vote. But wow, straight away from just that reward alone, Hayley took the target firmly off her back without her having to do a thing. So again, if Danny formed this new KFC alliance and then said let's get rid of Hayley, she still would have had all the options, and it still would have been beneficial to the likes of Flick and Gerald as well. So overall, whilst I do think it was a good plan to form this 5, I think it was poorly executed in the vote order that she constructed. So we then moved to the immunity challenge, with Emmett looking to make it 4 in a row, and it really seemed like a challenge that he could have been good at, involving a lot of strength and endurance. The percentage of body weight added to this challenge could have made it a little bit tougher for him though, with someone like Hayley also being a tank, but having to hold much less weight overall within this challenge. But in the end, neither of these two, who were my favourites to win this challenge, won, and it did come down to a showdown between Flick and Andrew, with Andrew being a real dark horse in these challenges, coming in clutch and getting it done. And whilst this challenge was taking place, Danny was making plans on the sidelines with some of her chicken coop as well as George, to bring them all in on the same page to target Emmett. And with Emmett already having this knowledge from Flick, it was really looking like a brawn battle tonight at Tribal between these two, and therefore the 2 biggest brawn players this season, one of them could be going home. And that is exactly how it kicks off back at camp, with Emmett still playing up like he knows nothing and saying the vote is for Hayley, and Danny continuing in her plans thinking Emmett has no idea of what she's conjured up. So the brawns on the surface are pretending to be one cohesive unit when really they are coming after one another. Emmett from the 2 looks like he was able to put himself in a better position in bringing in a group of 5 together with Gerald, Flick, Kara, George and himself, and also convinces Flick to play her idol on him just to be safe in the case Danny rounded up the rest of the brains on her side. Now, what I honestly think Flick should have done here was try to bring all the brawn back together and still get rid of Hayley, because this really can't work out long term for any member of the Brawn Alliance. Getting rid of a brawn really puts the brains in a huge advantage moving forward, and every single brawn seems a little bit oblivious to this at this point in the game, especially when we're talking about this season specifically, where it really has been a consistent theme about brawn versus brains. I mean, in a lot of other Survivor seasons, the theme of the season might drop off a little bit when alliances alter and the game becomes a little bit more fluid. But this season has really been all about a Brawn versus Brain battle. So I think targeting one of your own is a bad idea, especially in this situation. So if Flick was able to mend this relationship between Danny and Emmett and really pull all the Brawns back together, I think it really could have saved them all down the line. However, there is one person who again is putting himself in a power position to know where every single vote is going, and that person is George. George sees this as a prime time to reunite all the original Brains, as Hayley has been voted out and thrown a heap of people under the bus. He doesn't see her as that threatening compared to what she used to be in this game, and I think he really feels he can beat every single original Brain left in this game right now. Now firstly, I expected George to go after Flick, as he thinks it's highly likely she was going to play her idol for Emmett, but in the end, he went after Gerald instead, as he thinks that's the safest option, as they definitely won't play their idol on Gerald. Now the only possible thing I thought of that could put a spanner in George's plan is if Wei and Laura stay with what they believe to be the KFC alliance, and stuck with voting for Emmett. Then 2 votes would have been taken off Gerald, and Danny would have been the one to go home instead. But in the end, that may have not changed things too much, with all the Brains still having the numbers moving forward with a Brawn member going home. It just would have been one move that George could not have claimed for himself. Now at Tribal Council, everyone is still playing up it's the Brawn plus George and Kara versus the 4 Brains on the bottom. But ironically, they still state that George is the middleman and the one with all the power. But little do they know how much power this man actually possesses. Flick in the end does palm off her idol to Emmett before the votes are read, and with only 1 vote going Emmett's way, it looks as though the Brains, inclusive of Laura and Wei, stayed strong together to go with George's plan to get out Gerald. A complete baller move by George. He's turning into an absolute force this season. I mean seriously, he's had one of the best arcs I've ever seen in Survivor before. Literally, he had one of the worst opening episodes I've probably ever seen by any player ever. So being fortunate enough that the Brains won a lot of challenges early to save himself, and now he's turned into an absolute power play that is always in the right position, and he is honestly a genuine chance to now take it all the way and win this season. It's honestly remarkable to see. Now speaking of taking it all the way, there really are only a few people that could win this season based on the edit. One thing I haven't liked too much about this season is how lopsided the edit has been, when generally with these longer and more frequent episodes, we get more of an insight into these player arcs and character moments. So I think I can safely say that I would be absolutely blown away if any of Laura, Wei, Andrew or Kara won this season, with the other 5 in George, Hayley, Danny, Flick and Emmett all getting the majority of airtime, and one of them would have to be the winner of this season. I personally would love to see a George versus Hayley final 2, as I think that would be a really great battle for the prize as we saw in the previous episode and that Tribal Council. But my guess based on Brawn's current trajectory is Emmett and Danny will really struggle getting that far, and it could come down to say a George, Hayley and Kara final 3, with the winner of that final challenge taking Kara to the end and really just cleaning up the votes after that. But honestly, as I mentioned in my last recap, with me personally finding it really difficult to vote for someone who's already been voted out of the game, although I think Hayley is probably the most all-rounded player we've seen, I would love to see George win, as again I think it would be an amazing story and journey to see him take it all the way and take out the win this season. But that's all from me for this episode, and tonight we will see if the Brains stay strong, and I'll be back tomorrow to unpack how it all shapes out. As always, thank you all very much for watching. This is Analytical Strategy signing out once again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.